Captain Elena Vasquez stood alone on the bridge of the Defiance, staring at the largest fleet anyone had ever seen. 4,000 warships filled the darkness of space like a wall of metal and fire. Each ship was bigger than anything humanity had ever built. Each one carried enough weapons to turn a city into ash in seconds. The Veltheri Dominion had arrived. Elena was 42 years old. She had gray in her black hair and lines around her eyes from years of staring into the void between stars. She had commanded ships for 20 years, fought pirates, rescued stranded crews, and mapped distant worlds. But she had never seen anything like this. Her crew of 200 stood at their stations behind her. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The only sound was the soft hum of the ship's systems and the quiet breathing of frightened people trying to be brave. "Captain," said Lieutenant Chen, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're receiving a transmission from the Dominion flagship." Lena nodded slowly. "Put it through." The main screen flickered, and a face appeared. It was Lord Arctanus, High Commander of the Veltheri Invasion Fleet. His skin was pale blue, stretched tight over sharp bones. His eyes were completely black, like two pools of ink. When he smiled, his teeth were small and pointed. "Humans," he said, his voice smooth and cold. "I am Lord Arctanus. I speak for the Veltheri Dominion, rulers of 11 star systems, conquerors of 37 species. Your world has been selected for integration into our empire." Elena said nothing. She just watched. "You have one standard week to surrender unconditionally," Arctanus continued. "Every human will serve the Dominion. Your resources will become our resources. Your children will be taught our ways. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of fact." He leaned closer to the screen. 37 species have faced this choice before you. All of them chose to surrender. The mathematics are simple, human. You have one small ship. We have 4,000. You have 200 crew members. We have 6 million soldiers. Resistance is not brave. It is stupid. Transmission ended. For a long moment, nobody on the bridge moved. Then, slowly, every pair of eyes turned to Elena. She was still staring at the screen. Her face showed nothing. No fear, no anger. Just a calm, thoughtful expression, like she was solving a puzzle in her head. "Chen," she said quietly, "what do we know about the Dominion fleet composition?" The lieutenant blinked in surprise. "Ma'am?" "The ships. What species crew them?" Chen turned to her console and started pulling up data. "According to our scans, the Veltheri themselves only make up about 15% of the total crew. The rest are from conquered species. The Cathari handle engineering and maintenance. The Thessaries serve as navigators and scientists. The Morvok work as soldiers and guards." Elena nodded slowly. "And how long have these species served the Dominion?" "Some for over 200 years, Captain." 200 years, Elena repeated softly. 200 years of being told that resistance is impossible. 200 years of believing they have no choice. She turned to face her crew. These were her people. Scientists, engineers, pilots, medics. Most of them had families back on Earth. Most of them had never fired a weapon in combat. And now they were facing an empire that had swallowed entire civilizations. "I'm not going to lie to you," Elena said. "By every measure that matters, we should lose. We should surrender. We should accept that we're nothing against a force this powerful." She paused. "But I've been reading about the Dominion for weeks, and I've noticed something interesting. They haven't fought a real war in over a century. They win through intimidation. Through fear, they show up with overwhelming force. And everyone surrenders before the first shot is fired." She walked to the main console and pulled up a display showing the enemy fleet. "They've forgotten something important. They've forgotten what it looks like when someone refuses to be afraid. They've built their entire empire on the belief that resistance is futile. But that belief only works if everyone accepts it." Chief Engineer Okonkwo spoke up from the back of the bridge. "Captain, with respect, what exactly are you suggesting?" "We can't fight for 1,000 ships," Elena agreed. "We can't. But we're not going to fight their ships, Chief. We're going to fight their idea. We're going to show them, and everyone serving under them, that the Dominion can be challenged. That fear is a choice, not a fact. She turned back to the screen, showing the massive fleet. The Dominion didn't conquer 37 species through superior firepower alone. They conquered them through psychology. They made everyone believe that fighting back was pointless. But psychology works both ways. Alina opened a channel to Earth Command. Her message was simple: buy me time. Then she turned to her crew with something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. It was fire. It was determination. It was the look of someone who had found a path through the darkness. The Defiance carries something the Velthri have never encountered, she said. We have a database containing 10,000 years of human history. Every resistance movement, every revolution. Every time a small group of people stood against impossible odds and changed the world. The French Resistance. Gandhi's peaceful revolution. Spartacus and his slaves. The fall of every empire that ever called itself eternal. She smiled grimly. The Dominion thinks they're facing one ship with 200 crew members, but they're not. They're facing every human who ever refused to kneel. Every story we've ever told about courage and hope and standing up when standing up seems impossible. Lieutenant Chen's voice was shaky but strong. What do you need us to do, Captain? Alina looked at her crew. These ordinary people who are about to do something extraordinary. Learn everything you can about the species serving in that fleet. Their histories, their cultures, their languages. The stories they tell their children, the heroes they've forgotten. We're going to remind them who they used to be before the Dominion taught them to be afraid. She turned back to the window, to the wall of enemy ships that blocked out the stars. 4,000 ships, she said quietly. 6 million crew members from 37 conquered species. The Dominion sees that as their greatest strength. But I see it as their greatest weakness, because every single one of those beings was taught to believe they have no choice. Her voice hardened. We're going to teach them they were wrong, outside. The Dominion fleet waited like a storm about to break. They had come expecting surrender. They had come expecting fear. They had come expecting another easy victory. They had no idea what was coming. Lord Arctanus watched the tiny human ship from his command throne and laughed. The Defiance had not fled. It had not surrendered. Instead, it had moved closer to his fleet, like a small fish swimming toward a group of sharks. The arrogance of these creatures amazed him. They're broadcasting something, reported his communications officer. Thin Thessari female, with silver skin and nervous eyes. Multiple frequencies. Multiple languages. Arctanus waved his hand dismissively. Let them send their final prayers to whatever gods they worship. It changes nothing. In 6 days, their world burns. He returned to his reports. Already bored with the humans, he should have paid more attention. On the lower decks of the Dominion, supply ship Kethar 7, a group of engineers gathered around a small screen. They were Cathari, a species with rough gray skin and 4 arms, built for heavy labor. The Dominion had conquered their world 150 years ago. Since then, they had served as workers and mechanics, keeping the great warships running. None of them had ever questioned their place. None of them had ever imagined anything different. The human broadcast changed that. The woman on the screen spoke in perfect Cathari, with an accent that reminded the oldest engineers of their grandparents. She told them a story about a group of humans called the Spartans. 300 warriors who stood against an army of hundreds of thousands. They knew they would die. They fought anyway. Didn't fight because they thought they would win, the woman said. They fought because some things are worth fighting for, even when winning seems impossible. They fought so that others would see their courage and find their own. The engineers looked at each other. No one had ever spoken to them like this before. No one had ever suggested that they could be anything other than what the Dominion told them to be. Your ancestors were warriors once, the woman continued. Builders, dreamers. The Dominion took that from you, but they couldn't destroy it. It's still inside you. It's still inside all of you. And it only takes one moment of courage to remember who you really are. The broadcast ended. The engineers sat in silence. Then one of them, an old male named Gorth, who had served on Dominion ships for 60 years, did something he had never done before. He reached over and turned off his work console. "I'm tired," he said simply. "I think I'll rest for a while." The others stared at him. What he had just done was unthinkable. Refusing to work was punishable by death. But after a long moment, another engineer turned off his console. Then another. Then another. On the bridge of the Defiance, Lieutenant Chen watched the data streams with growing amazement. "Captain, it's working," she said. 6 supply ships have stopped responding to Dominion commands. They're not attacking or fleeing. They're just ... stopping, refusing to work. Alina nodded, her face calm but her eyes bright. "What about the other ships?" "The broadcasts are spreading. Crew members are sharing them with each other. We're seeing similar patterns across 40 ships now. Small acts of resistance, delayed responses to orders, unofficial gatherings in mess halls and engine rooms. The Dominion hasn't noticed yet. They're too focused on the big picture. They're watching for attacks, not for whispers." Alina allowed herself a small smile. That's always been the problem with empires. They watch for armies, but miss the ideas that bring them down. For 48 hours, the Defiance kept broadcasting. Each transmission was carefully designed for a different species. The humans had studied their histories, learned their languages, found the stories and heroes that the Dominion had tried to erase, to the sorry navigators. They told the story of Harriet Tubman, who led her people to freedom through secret paths in the night. To the Morvac soldiers, they spoke of the samurai who served cruel masters until the day they chose honor over obedience. To a dozen other species, they found the perfect words, the perfect examples, perfect reminders of who they used to be. The broadcasts weren't asking anyone to fight. They weren't calling for violence or rebellion. They were simply asking questions that the Dominion had forbidden for centuries. What if you don't have to be afraid? What if your chains exist only because you believe in them? What if one act of courage could change everything? Lord Arctanus finally noticed on the 3rd day. "What do you mean, 12 ships have refused orders?" His voice was cold and dangerous. His adjutant, a young Velthari male, swallowed nervously. "The supply vessels, my lord. Their crews have stopped working. They say they're tired. They say they need rest. When we demand they return to duty, they simply don't respond. This is unacceptable. Send soldiers to force them back to work." "We tried, my lord. The soldiers we sent are from the Morvac species. They reached the ships, and then... He hesitated. "Then what?" "They joined the protest." Arcnus stood slowly from his throne. For the first time since arriving at this insignificant solar system, he felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. He felt uncertain. "This is the humans doing," he said. "Their broadcasts." "Yes, my lord. They've been transmitting continuously. Stories, history, messages of ... hope." Arctanus laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Hope. They think hope can stop the Dominion. We have crushed hope across 37 worlds. We have shown the galaxy that hope is a weakness." He turned to his weapons officer. "Target the human vessel. Destroy it immediately." The weapons officer hesitated. She was Thessari like the communications officer. Her silver fingers hovered over the controls. "My lord," she said carefully, "if we destroy them now, we make them into something more dangerous than a ship. We make them into a symbol. Every being in this fleet has seen their broadcasts. If we kill them, we prove that the Dominion is afraid of ideas." "I am not afraid of anything." "No, my lord. But the others might think you are." Arctonus stared at her. No servant had ever spoken to him like this before. No conquered being had ever dared to suggest that he might be wrong. He raised his hand to strike her. Then he stopped. Looking around his bridge, he noticed something that chilled him more than any weapon could. His crew beings from 6 different conquered species were watching him. Not with fear, not with obedience. With something else. Something that looked almost like ... waiting. They were waiting to see what he would do. They were weighing his reaction. For the first time in 200 years, the servants of the Dominion were questioning their masters, and somewhere in the darkness between the stars, a small human ship continued broadcasting its message of hope to everyone who would listen. The first cracks had appeared in the Empire's armor, and Elena Vasquez was just getting started. The secret message arrived at midnight. Ship time. Elena was in her quarters, trying to sleep but failing. Her mind kept running through calculations, possibilities, and fears. The protests were spreading through the Dominion fleet, but they were still small, still fragile. One wrong move, and the Velthory would crush them without mercy. Her console beeped. A priority message, encrypted with a code she didn't recognize. She opened it carefully. A face appeared on her screen of the sorry female, with silver skin and deep purple eyes. She looked older than most of her species, with lines of wisdom and worry around her mouth. "Captain Vasquez," the stranger said quietly. "My name is Vandris. I am the High Scholar of the Dominion, the chief strategist for Lord Arctanus himself." Lena sat up straight. "You're calling me from inside the flagship?" "Yes, and if anyone discovers this transmission, I will be executed within the hour." Vandris paused. "But some things are worth the risk. Your broadcasts have reminded me of that. What do you want?" Vandris looked at her for a long moment before answering. "For 200 years, I have served the Dominion faithfully. My species, the Thessaly, were conquered 3 generations ago. We were told that resistance was pointless, that the Dominion was eternal, that our only choice was to serve well and survive." She closed her eyes briefly. "I believed it. I built my whole life around that belief. I rose to the highest position any non-Velthory has ever achieved, and I told myself that this was success. This was the best outcome possible." Her eyes opened again, and Elena saw something burning in them. Something that looked like the first flames of a fire that had been waiting years to ignite. "Then I watched your broadcasts. I heard you tell the story of a human named Gandhi, who freed his people without raising a single weapon. I heard you talk about courage and choice, and the power of standing together against injustice." Vandris leaned closer to the screen. "And I realized something terrible, Captain. I realized that I had chosen safety over freedom. I had chosen survival over hope. And in doing so, I had helped chain my own people." Lena spoke carefully. "You said you wanted something from me. What is it?" "I want to help you. Not just to save your world, though that matters too. I want to help you tear down the system that taught my people to be slaves." "How?" Vandris smiled grimly. "I know every secret of the Dominion. Every weakness. Every lie they've told to keep their conquered species obedient. And I know the one thing that could shatter their control completely." She touched her console, and data began streaming to Elena's screen. Names, faces, numbers. "The Velthory are only 15% of their own military," Vandris explained. "Everything else, the ships, the weapons, the soldiers, the engineers, all of it, depends on species like mine. Species who have been convinced they have no choice." "But they do have a choice," Elena said. "Yes, they just need to be reminded. They need to see it. Not hear it in broadcasts, but see it with their own eyes. They need a moment so powerful, so undeniable, that it breaks through 200 years of lies." Elena was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "What do you have in mind?" Vandris told her. 3 hours later, Elena stood on the bridge of the Defiance, looking at her crew. They had heard the plan. They understood what she was asking them to do, and they were terrified. She didn't blame them. "What the High Scholar is suggesting," Lieutenant Chen said slowly, "is suicide. Flying straight through the middle of a hostile fleet without weapons powered. If even one ship fires on us, we're dead." "I know," Elena said. "Captain," Chief Engineer Okonkwo added, "I've run the numbers. Even if 90% of the fleet doesn't fire, the remaining 10% could destroy us 100 times over." "I know," Elena said again. "Then why are we considering this?" Elena walked to the main window. Outside, the Dominion fleet waited like a cloud of death. Thousands of ships. Millions of beings. An empire that had never known defeat. "'Cause it's not about surviving," she said quietly. "It's about showing them something they've never seen before." She turned to face her crew. The Velthari control their empire through one simple idea. Resistance is futile. Every species they've conquered learned that lesson. Every rebellion was crushed. Every hero was killed. After 200 years, nobody even tries anymore. She spread her hands. But what happens when someone does try? What happens when one small ship refuses to be afraid? What happens when 4,000 warships have a chance to destroy us and they hesitate? Lieutenant Chen's eyes widened. They question everything. Exactly. If we fly through that fleet unarmed, unafraid, broadcasting our message of hope and we survive, it proves that the Dominion isn't all-powerful. It proves that their control is an illusion. It proves that courage matters, and if we don't survive, Okonkwo asked. Elena met his eyes. Then we die as free people. And every single being in that fleet will remember that we chose death over surrender. That we faced 4,000 ships and never knelt. She looked around at all of them. Scientists, engineers, pilots, people who had joined the space program to explore. Not to fight. I won't order you to do this, she said. It has to be a choice. If anyone wants to leave, the escape pods are ready. I'll launch you toward Earth myself, and no one will think less of you. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then, slowly, Lieutenant Chen turned back to her console. Setting course through the center of the enemy fleet, Captain, Okonkwo returned to his station. All systems ready. One by one, every crew member took their place. 200 people choosing courage over safety, hope over fear. Alina felt something warm spread through her chest. Pride, love, gratitude for these incredible humans. Open all broadcast channels, she ordered. I want every ship in that fleet to hear us. I want every being watching to understand what they're about to see. She took a deep breath. This is Captain Alina Vasquez of the human vessel Defiance. We are about to fly through your fleet. We carry no weapons. We seek no battle. We come only with a message. The ship began to move forward, toward the wall of warships. You have been told that resistance is futile. You have been told that you have no choice. You have been told that the Dominion is eternal and unbeatable. The first enemy ships loomed ahead, massive and deadly. We're here to show you that those are lies. We are here to remind you that courage is contagious. We are here to prove that one ship, one crew, one moment of defiance can change everything. Targeting systems locked on to the Defiance from 100 different vessels. Weapons powered up. Commanders screamed orders, but the ship kept flying forward. Steady, calm, unafraid. We are not asking you to fight. We are not asking you to rebel. We are only asking you to remember who you were before the Dominion taught you to be afraid. The Defiance passed the first row of warships. Nothing fired. Then the second row. The third, the fourth. Crew members on every ship watched the tiny human vessel glide past them like a dream. They saw its lights blazing in the darkness. They heard its message of hope echoing through their ships and deep inside their hearts. Something that had been sleeping for 200 years began to wake up. Lord? Arctinus's voice screamed across the fleet command channel. Fire! Destroy them. This is a direct order. 60% of the fleet did nothing. They simply watched as hope flew past them on silver wings. The throne room of Emperor Malthus VII stretched for half a mile in every direction. Its ceiling was so high that clouds sometimes formed beneath it. Statues of past emperors lined the walls, each one carved from solid gold, each one staring down with cold, eternal eyes. Malthus sat on a throne made from the fused weapons of conquered species. For 90 years, he had ruled the Dominion with absolute power. He had crushed rebellions. He had silenced dissent. He had taught the galaxy that the Velthari were gods, and gods did not fail. Now a small human ship had made him look weak. Explain this to me again, he said, his voice quiet and dangerous. One vessel. One tiny human vessel flew through our entire fleet, and 60% of our ships refused to fire. Lord Arctanus knelt before the throne, his head bowed low. He had never felt fear like this before. Yes, my emperor. The humans used psychological tactics. They broadcast messages to our servant species. They told stories. They planted ideas. Ideas. Malthus tasted the word like poison. You are telling me that the greatest military force in galactic history was defeated by ideas? Not defeated, my emperor. Merely ... disrupted. The situation is containable. If we execute the disobedient crew members as an example, order will be restored.
Malthus.
Consider this. His black eyes were empty of mercy, empty of doubt. He had built his empire on fear, and he knew only one response to challenges against his power. Execute them all, he said. Arctanus looked up sharply. My emperor. Every crew member on every ship that refused to fire, execute them. Publicly. Let the entire fleet watch. Let every conquered world see what happens to those who disobey. That would be hundreds of thousands of beings, my emperor. I am aware. Malthus's voice was like ice. Are you questioning my judgment, Lord Arctanus? Arctanus bowed his head again. No, my emperor. Your will shall be done. The order went out across the fleet. Immediate execution of all crew members who had refused to fire on the human vessel. No trials, no mercy. Just death. On the bridge of the Defiance, Alina received word of the Emperor's command from Vaindris, who had been listening to all communications. Alina closed her eyes. She had hoped for this. She had planned for this. But knowing what was about to happen still made her sick. He's doing exactly what I thought he would, she said quietly. Every tyrant in history has made the same mistake. When they feel their power slipping, they respond with violence. They think fear will save them. But this time it will destroy them, Vaindris said through the com channel. Because of what you're about to do, Alina nodded. Open all broadcast channels. Priority 1. I want every being in this fleet to hear what I'm about to say. The transmission went out, cutting through every frequency, overriding every other signal. On 4,000 ships, the voice of a human captain replaced all other sounds. This is Captain Alina Vasquez. I have just learned that Emperor Malthus has ordered the execution of every crew member who did not fire on my ship. Hundreds of thousands of beings, engineers, navigators, soldiers, medics are about to be killed for the crime of hesitation. She paused, letting the words sink in. I want everyone listening to understand something. Those crew members did not rebel. They did not attack their masters. They simply paused. They simply questioned. And for that, the Dominion has sentenced them to death. Across the fleet, beings of every species stopped what they were doing to listen. They had all heard the rumors of the execution order. Now, they heard a human putting it into words. This is what the Dominion truly is. Not a government. Not an empire. A machine that destroys anyone who dares to think for themselves. Today it's the crew members who hesitated. Tomorrow, it could be anyone. Tomorrow, it could be you. Elena's voice grew stronger. The Emperor thinks this will make you afraid. He thinks killing your friends and family will teach you to obey. But I think it will teach you something else. I think it will show you that you have nothing to lose. She took a deep breath. You've been told that serving the Dominion keeps you safe. But there is no safety in slavery. There is no security in chains. The Dominion will use you until you're broken, and then it will throw you away. On ships throughout the fleet, beings looked at each other. They saw the fear in their companions' eyes. But they also saw something else. They saw anger. They saw recognition. They saw the beginning of understanding. I'm not asking you to fight for humanity. I'm asking you to fight for yourselves. For your families. For your children who will grow up in chains if you do nothing. For every generation that will suffer under Dominion rule because you were too afraid to stand up. Lena thought about Earth, about her family, about everyone who was counting on her. One ship stood against 4,000, and 60% of you hesitated. That wasn't weakness. That was the first moment of courage you've shown in 200 years. Don't let them kill you for it. Don't let them punish you for being brave. She delivered her final words. The Dominion is strong because you believe it's strong. But what happens when you stop believing? What happens when you realize that all of you together are more powerful than any emperor? What happens when the chains finally break? The transmission ended. For a long moment, nothing happened, then everything happened at once. On the battleship Kethar Prime, the engineering crew locked themselves in the engine room and shut down all power. On the cruiser Thesari Dawn, the navigation team changed course, pointing the ship away from Earth and toward Dominion space. On 100 other vessels, crew members who had been marked for execution decided they would rather die fighting than die kneeling. The fleet that had come to conquer humanity began tearing itself apart, not with weapons, not with violence, simply with refusal, simply with the choice to stop participating in their own oppression. Lord Arctanus watched his command screens fill with red alerts and felt his world crumbling around him. Lord, his Thesari communications officer said, "We're receiving a request for asylum from High Scholar Vandris. She wishes to defect to the human vessel." Arctanus turned to her slowly. "Vandris is a traitor?" The officer met his eyes without flinching. "She is free, my lord, as we all should be." Then she reached up and removed her Dominion rank insignia. Dropping it on the floor, "I resign," she said simply, all around the bridge. Other officers began doing the same, the Sari Cathari Morvac, one by one. They removed the symbols of their service and stood tall. For the first time in 90 years, someone had told Emperor Malthois no, and his empire was falling because of it. On the Defiance, Alina watched the chaos spreading through the Dominion fleet and felt tears streaming down her face. Tears of relief. Tears of hope. Tears for everyone who was finally finding the courage to be free. Captain Lieutenant Chen said softly, "Vandris is requesting permission to come aboard. She's bringing something with her. She says it's the complete technical database of the entire Dominion." Alina wiped her eyes and smiled. "Tell her she's welcome," she said. "Tell her we have a lot of work to do." Lord Arctanus had 300 ships left, 300 out of 4,000. The rest had either joined the rebellion, surrendered, or simply stopped responding to commands. The greatest military fleet in galactic history had been reduced to a fraction of its former power, and it hadn't lost a single battle. Arctanus stood on his bridge, watching the chaos around him. Behind him, only Velthari officers remained. Every servant species had abandoned their posts. The ship was running on emergency systems, barely functional. But Arctanus was not thinking about survival. He was thinking about honor. His family had served the Dominion for 15 generations. His ancestors had conquered worlds. His name was carved on monuments across 11 star systems. And now, some human female, on a tiny ship, had destroyed everything his people had built. He would not let that stand. "Set course for the human vessel," he ordered. "All remaining loyal ships follow. We will destroy them or die trying." His weapons officer looked uncertain. "My lord, our forces are severely reduced. The other ships have surrendered or joined the enemy. If we attack now, then we die as warriors." Arctanus turned to face him. "Do you understand what that ship represents? It represents the end of everything we are. If we let them survive, if we let them return to their world as heroes, the Dominion falls forever. Every conquered species will rise up. Every world we control will rebel." He walked to the front of the bridge, staring out at the stars. "I will not allow that. The Velthari will not fade into history as the empire that lost to one ship and one human captain. If this is our end, then we end it on our terms. We end it in fire." The 300 remaining ships formed up behind the flagship. They were crewed entirely by Velthari now true believers in the Dominion. Beings who would rather die than accept defeat. They moved toward the Defiance like a wave of death. On the human ship, alarms began screaming. 300 vessels incoming, Lieutenant Chen reported. All heavily armed, all Velthari accrued. They're on attack trajectory. Alina looked at the screen showing the approaching fleet. It was still overwhelming force. Even 300 Dominion warships could destroy her single vessel 1,000 times over. But something had changed. Somewhere in the past few days, she had stopped being afraid. "Power down engines," she said. Everyone on the bridge turned to stare at her captain. Okonkwo asked. Power down everything. Weapons, not that we have any that would matter. Shields, engines, everything except communications and life support. Chen's voice was careful. Ma'am, if they fire on us, we'll have no defense. I know. Lena smiled slightly. That's the point. High Scholar Vandris, who had arrived on board hours earlier, stepped forward. Captain, what are you planning? Alina didn't answer directly. Instead, she opened a channel to the incoming fleet. Lord Arctanus, she said, her voice calm and clear. I know you're coming. I know you want to destroy us. Before you do, I'd like to speak with you. There was a long pause. Then Arctanus's voice came through, cold and full of hate. You have nothing to say that I wish to hear, human. Perhaps. But humor me. You're about to kill us anyway. What harm could a few words do? Another pause. Then, speak. Alina stood in the center of her bridge, surrounded by her crew. 200 people who had followed her into the impossible and survived. 200 people who were now facing death with quiet dignity. Lord Arctanus, I want to tell you something. Your empire forgot long ago. You can destroy this ship. You can kill me and every person aboard, but you've already lost. Not because we beat you, but because we showed the galaxy that you could be beaten. Arctanus's voice was harsh. We have not been beaten. We are Velthari. We do not lose. Look around you, Lord Arctanus. Look at your fleet. Where are the 4,000 ships that arrived a week ago? Where are the 6 million crew members who served under you? They're not here because we destroyed them. They're not here because they chose to leave. Elena's voice grew stronger. For 200 years, the Dominion ruled through fear. You taught every conquered species that resistance was futile. You made them believe they had no choice. And for 200 years, that worked. She paused. But fear is not loyalty. Obedience is not respect. You built your empire on the silence of people who had simply given up hope. And the moment we reminded them that hope exists, the moment we showed them that courage is possible, your entire empire crumbled. Arctanus was silent. You're not fighting to save the Dominion, Alina continued. The Dominion is already dead. You're fighting because you don't know how to do anything else. You're fighting because admitting the truth would mean accepting that everything your people did was wrong. She looked at the screen showing the approaching warships. So go ahead, fire. Kill us all. Turn our ship into dust. And then watch what happens. Watch as every world you've conquered tells the story of the humans who stood alone and never knelt. Watch as every child of every species grows up hearing about the ship called Defiance. And the crew who chose death over surrender. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. We will become a legend. We will become a symbol that no amount of firepower can destroy. And every time your people try to conquer someone new, that someone will remember us. They will remember that the Dominion can be challenged. They will remember that courage is contagious. Elena spread her hands. Is that what you want, Lord Arctanus? Do you want to create the most powerful symbol of resistance the galaxy has ever seen? Do you want to spend the rest of your life fighting people who were inspired by our sacrifice? She waited. The bridge was silent. The crew of the Defiance watched their captain with tears in their eyes. This was it. This was the moment. Lord Arctanus's finger hovered over the command that would destroy them. A minute passed, then another. Then his voice came through the cum channel, and it sounded different, tired, old, defeated. Stand down, he said, on the bridge of his flagship. His officers stared at him in disbelief. My lord. I said stand down. Arctanus slumped back in his command chair. She's right. The Dominion is finished. Whether we destroy her or not changes nothing. He looked at his hands that had signed death warrants for millions. Hands that had built an empire on suffering and fear. The humans didn't defeat us with weapons, he said quietly. They defeated us with ideas. With stories. With hope, he laughed bitterly. How do you fight hope? He opened a channel to his remaining ships. All vessels, this is Lord Arctanus. I am formally surrendering to the human vessel Defiance. All hostilities are to cease immediately. The war is over. On the Defiance, Alina felt her knees go weak. She grabbed the edge of her console to steady herself. "They're standing down," Chen reported, her voice shaking. "All of them. They're standing down." Alina closed her eyes. She thought about Earth, about her family, about the impossible journey that had brought her here. They had won. Not through firepower. Not through superior technology. Through the simple ancient truth that freedom is stronger than fear, and courage is contagious. 1 year later, Alina Vasquez stood before the newly formed Galactic Coalition. 38 species had gathered on a station in neutral space, including the Velthari, who had chosen to join as equals rather than continue as conquerors. The Defiance hung in orbit above Earth, preserved forever as a monument to what humanity had achieved. Alina looked out at the assembled delegates, beings of every shape and color, beings who had been enemies a year ago and were now building something new together. "We didn't come here to conquer anyone," she said. "We didn't come here to prove that humans are stronger or smarter or better. We came here because we believed in something," she smiled. "We believe that every being deserves to be free. We believed that courage is contagious. And we believe that empires built on fear will always fall when people remember how to stand." She gestured to the window behind her, where the stars stretched out in infinite possibility. "This is our legacy. Not conquest. Not power. But a galaxy where 38 species chose to build together instead of fighting apart. A galaxy where hope is stronger than fear. On the monument that stood in the heart of the station, where beings of every species would pass and remember, a simple inscription gleamed in golden letters. *1 ship, crew. 1 truth. Empires fall when free beings remember how to stand. The Defiance asterisk had taught the galaxy something it would never forget, and humanity's story was just beginning.